Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, lads and ladettes. This is going to be another episode of Rally with Racket. After the big 1-5, my initial Warzone thoughts video, and my sort of absence from the YouTube channel, I thought this would be a decent medium for me to talk about, sort of long process that has happened recently with updates with regards to my life and why I haven't been able to make the most consistent of content. So basically, my last computer fried itself. A little bit of liquid spilt in, and unfortunately, it is no longer working. So I'm here with my new PC, GTX 280, by the way, sorry, RTX 280. Just fiddling around with the letters there. RTX 280. Ion processor. I mean, it's running really, really well. So hopefully with this new PC, we can stream a lot more games without having, performance issues. I used to have a GTX 970, and it did run most games very well, but with streaming, it sort of was a little bit of a pain sometimes. But this thing, I think, can do the job pretty well. But yeah, it is. It is what it is, man. It is what it is. That in conjunction of my study has picked itself back up. Um, so it makes things a little bit more difficult. It is certainly doable, but um, you know, uh, I've sort of changed my philosophy around from my previous sort of standing on my YouTube channel. Overall, I do want to have a weekly goal of at least one video every single, oh yeah, one Rally with Racket podcast video a week. Obviously, with the changes I've had recently, I couldn't be able to fulfill that goal. But either way, it is healthy for me to remain at that sort of state. And if I do feel like making any more content, I'll just provide that as well. Uh, the thing that's sort of holding me back is I lost my editing software. So I'm gonna try and find a way to sort of work around that. I used to have Sony Vegas, and yeah, license key and stuff all ruined. I'm just gonna take a sip of this. I'm not planning on pirating it either on this PC. I don't really want to ruin anything. Um, so yeah, that's a little bit annoying. The editing process is going to be a little bit more difficult for me now. And as I was talking about my philosophy with my sort of previous iteration of this channel, is I wanted to make more um, consistent videos, like 3 to 4 times a week, but uh, making sure that for me now quality's better. Before I didn't do my own thumbnails. I just left them at one of the random spots it just pours in throughout the video as a set thumbnail, like the defaults. Now I make my own thumbnails. I have overlays and stuff, so we're growing in that regard. But I just wanted to make sure that we can produce quality content that overall we wouldn't feel anxious about producing, because one of the main issues I've always had with my content is, I mean, you guys don't really understand the gauge of this with the amount of sort of ideas for the podcast. I mean, I've gone through an hour talking, and I would say one thing that I felt like could be misrepresented, or maybe I stuttered too much, or maybe I wasn't conveying the thing that I really wanted to convey, and I'd be like, fuck it. It may be an hour, but that part ruined it for me, and I don't want to retake it again because I want the experience to feel real. So I can be a harsh critic on myself sometimes, and it's not like I'm a huge YouTuber and I'm in the scope of everyone, and if I make one mistake, I'm gonna be fired from someone or something. It's just like the case of I want to get used to this routine. I want to get used to sort of trying to refine my own craft, and I feel like once I make it sort of harder on myself, it'll feel easier in the long run. um, Different people have their different ways, their takes, and how they approach their work. I wouldn't even call this work, it's more like a recreational type thing. But I think, like, overall, it is healthy to have like a podcast. I mean, I would encourage anyone to make their own podcast, really. Like, one of the few things that I hear, like when people talk about this type of stuff, is like, oh, I'm not an expert in any field. Like, why would anyone give a shit about what I say? But it doesn't really matter. You can be a no Joe, hard working 9 to 5 construction worker. You could be a philosopher. You can be a carpet cleaner. You can literally be anyone. And so long as you have like a microphone, you can make your own podcast. And the reason why I did this is to sort of keep healthy. Um, it's something that can keep me into a routine. It is something that can keep the mind healthy. And someone who has, been in a line of work that does involve a lot of talking and commentary and casting, sort of having different avenues and mediums to explore, sort of that devolve from the same talking attribute can be helpful in developing vocabularies, uh, or just several other different skills that you can apply that would be relevant to myself as a person, um, and within my study too, which helps. So there are a lot of things to talk about. I mean, I do have quite a few subjects lined up for several other Rally with Racket episodes. So hopefully they can be brought into fruition. I'm not going to promise any like set episodes because sometimes I just can't um, fulfill what I want without sort of having that unrealistic expectation of myself, as I was talking about before. It depends on my performance, depends on, you know, how I think about the whole podcast was, or the way that the flow was. I mean, there's several different aspects, and I think that sort of, um, you know, slows the content flow. And some of them I just don't give a shit. Like I've had episodes of overtime because they were alive. I would have episodes where I felt like I was um, completely irrelevant to anything, and I just sort of cruise along and say default statements. I mean, mind you, like for people who may not know, like Overtime podcast was a podcast that me and myself, Whipley and myself, hosted for Overwatch contenders. Um, and we've had a few iterations of podcasts in the oceanic scene. Bobby J used to host one. The Lost Casters hosted one. Uh, the most recent one would be the Snowballs iteration. But I'm pretty happy to say that I think our podcast probably reached the most people in terms of its success, because we had a set philosophy in that we wanted to promote the players, um, and we had like established roles within the podcast. I feel like one thing that I feel like gets lost. I mean, there are different types of podcasts, right? But I feel like with my sort of or the realm that I was supporting needed that sort of stance or character that I provided. So let me give you an example. So a more free flow, casual podcast, or sometimes informative, would be like the Joe Rogan Experience, where you don't exactly need like set characters or things to develop because it's just like a normal conversation, right? Where sometimes with things that are more professional, when you're trying to reach more people and when you're trying to create a product for a scene, establishing roles, um, and these aren't exactly strict, but like following a certain pattern can be advantageous. And the thing that I notice about a lot of podcasts, and especially within our scene, is that everyone sort of was the same. And so we first on developed a way to sort of like our motto was it's always going to be for the players. But at the same time, we wanted hosts to be relevant as well, which is why I sort of place myself as the cynic, the critical one, the heel of the podcast, so I could stir more conversations. I mean, Ripley's always been a very nice person, so I felt like when you have those two contrasting styles, plus the guests, you can make things a lot more interesting. Um, So there you go. There's my little philosophy, my little concepts on podcast. There, I feel like having a established style between what you want on your podcast or your theme is very important. I don't know how we've delved into this, by the way. Like we're just ranting away, but yeah, with this podcast, like it's sort of like the Joe Rogan one, where the other one was sort of like an esports talent, game show type thing where we have characters, uh, but like this is not set to any agenda really. You're getting me. You're getting 100% me, and I may cover subjects that are more controversial, and perhaps breaking the fourth wall here, I could be overly cynical on things to perhaps get more clicks. Uh, which I don't think it's gonna be very likely. But due to how my personality is, like I'm not really the most optimistic person in the world, like to be frank. Um, and I do like the idea of bettering something by, uh, you know, giving criticism, not in the way that like I'm hating on something, but you're being informative in a way that you're thinking outside of the box or what you know the the necessary means are from a normal person, and you're making sure you're stretching the boundaries and you're tippy toeing. Other people are tippy toeing around it, but you just make your own course. Let's say it's an interesting concept, but we need to make sure we're fueled throughout this whole thing. Having a nice mocha coffee. But yeah, I mean, I've missed doing this, man. I miss doing this. I need to get my room clean, by the way, so you can see my bed's not really done in the background. But yeah, I'll do that, fellas. I'll do that. Um, but yeah, guys. I mean, I've basically been pondering, procrastinating on different ways I can up my production value with both Twitch and YouTube. Once I get my new editing software, I'll see what the limits are and I'll see what I can do personally. Otherwise, I might just pay someone to do an intro or whatever for a few more series I've been planning. Um, I have a few different ideas. Like for example, I'm gonna have spooky Sundays or spooky Saturdays, whatever I feel like really, where I play a horror game on stream and I record it, put it onto the YouTube channel. And also I have the idea of doing tier list Tuesdays, where I just go on the tier list, make a website, and just like look at something random and I make a tier list out of it. Not something random, it's like something that I obviously know. Like I'm not gonna make a fucking tier list on like some American fast food thing when I haven't even like looked at half of, or tasted any half of what their fast food is. Like I haven't fucking had Popeyes before. Like they don't have that shit in Australia, mate. Like I can't do that. Um, but yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Like I'm a person who has changed quite a lot as a person. In fact, when I was younger, like about 2, 3 years ago, I felt like that was when I was at my smartest. And the less I've read, I've sort of uh, misstepped in my life. I've done the opposite of developing. I've detracted from my own mental state, and through personal beings, whether it be relationships or family issues or esports issues, it's difficult to sort of keep in mind what you want to do, what your goals are, without sort of subverting yourself from society, and being isolated. No pun intended, given the current situation. But it's important, I think, to stay persistent. Like as I said, but this completely relates back to the PC. Have a new PC, and I think with this opportunity, I do have the, um, you know, I do have the resources to make good content. I can't say the excuse of, oh, I can't really play this game on stream because it won't run very well. It's going to be jittery for my viewers. I don't think I have that excuse anymore. I have a RTX 280. So with all that in mind, mate, like hopefully we can get a little bit more of a grasp, and I can watch back this video to assemble more motivation for myself. But I'm open to criticism. I'm open to suggestions of what games or something you'd like to see on my end. Whether it be more guests or guests that are willing to come onto the show, whether it be a particular YouTube series, whether you'd like me to react to things. Like I'm completely open on what you guys think. Um, oh my God, I wasn't touching the mouse for quite a while, and my monitor ended up shutting off. So lighting would probably look a little bit weird for a few seconds. I do think it will still recording, still recording. Cool. I was a little bit worried that the recording would have stopped. I'm like, gonna have to do this again. Deja vu, deja fucking vu. Um, yeah, I've already had a test stream. I ended up playing some Dragon Ball Fighter Z. It's a game that does have a lot of fast moving, so I thought that'd be a good way to test the sort of different rendering options and seeing if they were smooth or not. And that stream was pretty successful, so I'm happy about that. Obviously, it's not the most extensive research, and the game itself isn't the most intensive in terms of frame rate requirements because every fighting game runs on 60 FPS. But we'll definitely be testing out a few things. I'm keen on playing some Alien Isolation on the weekend and seeing how that stream runs, and we can hopefully upload the VOD to the YouTube channel, whether it be a full VOD or whether it be clips of funny moments or scary moments or whatever. I'm keen to explore that. Uh, I'm going to have to do a lot of downloading. That's the problem. Luckily, with Streamlabs, I've managed to save my overlays uh, in some sort of cloud or something. I don't know, but it's tagged onto my profile, these overlays, I suppose. But once again, as I said sort of earlier on in the video, that my editing software is not here, so I might have to learn something else. I mean, I'm not going to spend any more money on anything. I mean, I already had the issue of my older monitor not being compatible with my RTX 280 because it had uh, three display ports, one HDMI port, but my old monitor, its only way of achieving 144 hertz was DVI to DVI. Even if I did an adapter, would have been compatible. I checked out all avenues. I bought adapters. Nothing seemed to work in that sort of respect. That was a really big heart attack for me. Um, and yeah, I couldn't get 144 hertz, which for some games is extremely noticeable. For example, I've been playing a lot of Valorant lately, which will be the next topic of Rally with Racket, by the way. Wink, wink. Um, and 60 to 144 in Valorant is really big. Even though we're playing on high ping because I am from Australia, it is quite annoying to have that sort of 60 hertz there too, which makes things a lot more difficult to deal with. And it feels like your sensitivity is different with different hertz and as well. Like it got me out of my comfort zone. But yeah, had the issue with the monitor, which was giving me anxiety. I'm not gonna lie, I was giving me extreme anxiety. I'm like, fuck, you know. Ended up getting this monitor for about 400. Um, plus my PC, which was about 3,600. So three 3,600 all up. 4,000 bucks, right? Like fucking just like that. Could have saved 400 if my fucking monitor was compatible with my new graphics card, but apparently it wasn't. So that's a bit of a bummer, but oh well. With my family helping me out in that situation, um, it made things a lot easier. So thank you, fam, for helping me there. I really appreciate it. But you know, we can just go on and do what we can. As I said, I'm back into study as well because we were going in on campus, and I found that a lot more easier uh, than doing any other type of study. Like face to face study is so much better, man. Like in terms of processing information, in terms of being able to write things down physically on the paper with your peers, your classmates next to you. You have set, uh, times where you can go around after recess or lunch, where you can go around, walk on the campus, have a coffee in your hand, and talk to your mates. Like it's fantastic, man. But like the problem is with this online shit, it's so difficult to understand all the information, like because you don't feel as immersed, you don't feel as interested, even though like like the whole concept of being in your room and like studying, like, because it's a comfort area, like I feel like for studying you need to sort of be out of your comfort zone in order for your mind to sort of take everything in. And being in your own room, like it doesn't feel right. It does not feel right. Um, so I've been finding myself like I need to work harder. So I don't want to hand in any late assessments or anything like that. Trying to make sure that I'm on board, because that's the last thing I'd really want, considering this situation with COVID. But yeah, I mean, crazy days, by the way, crazy days. I mean, on one topic from another. I hope all you lads sincerely are coping well with the COVID. Um, it's really difficult, and different countries have different restrictions, have different laws. But New South Wales is one of the hotspots of Australia, so doesn't make it the most appetizing thing to set my stomach. But as citizens, as civilians, I hopefully I'm being hopeful of people, and actually no, I'm not. People are fucking stupid. The idea that people are gonna stay home, not do anything socially in Australia, like that's not never gonna fucking happen. That is never gonna fucking happen. Like we're a pretty outgoing place. And then other countries are struggling with that shit too. Like look at America's numbers. Australia's actually not too bad in that regard, actually, in terms of numbers, but still, um, oh, well, what a weird situation, right? What a weird situation. But you know, advice to my people who watch this video: just play it safe. Play it safe. There's no repercussions of playing it safe. Just understand, uh, what it is, what you don't have to do, what you have to do, and see where the boundaries are, man. See where the boundaries are. This is not something that we are used to experiencing on to such a mass level. There's been several comparisons, like to the Spanish flu, or like to the fucking even the Black Plague. But um, we're a much more advanced society now, and not everyone's gonna die on this world. If people play it safe, if people abide by the rules, you have time on your hands. Vaccination will probably be created within like a year's time or 6 months, whatever the fuck they said. They're changing it by the day, and yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to be rumbling on it by for too much longer. So yeah, I mean, this is going to be a shorter episode of Rally with Racket, though. Like I've already sort of stated what the boundaries were for me creating more content. I'm going to be doing a lot of downloading assets and stuff of what I used to have. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for sticking on, and being loyal. It is much appreciated. You're all wonderful people. If you want to pop up on the podcast, I have uh, up to 4 slots. I have a one-on-one slot. I have a 4 box slot overlays for the podcast. It's very flexible. You're welcome to come on the show. But yeah, I appreciate all the support, fellas. There's not really too much I want to say, really. You know, actually, small update on esports. I've been receiving some questions from peers that were within the Overwatch scene and asking if I'm going to be coming back to like Overwatch or like investing into a new title like Valorant. Personally, let me take a sip of my coffee before I say any of this. Um, it's a good question, right? Because theoretically, if I were to go back to Overwatch, it'd be the best time to, right? Like the game's not dying, but it is slowly decaying, right? And with Valorant's release, I suspect a few people are going to be hopping on board that. And logistically, yes, it would make sense for me to go back to Overwatch in a competitive sense, to maybe take on casting again, or even go back to coaching. But as much as it makes sense, I don't want to do it. I feel like in order to invest into something, you have to have passion into it. And for me, it's sort of like beating a dead horse of Overwatch. Um, I've learnt my lesson in Overwatch, uh, and with the way that the game has been developing, or in this day and age, the way that it's devolved, I should say, I don't think it's worth my time, personally, considering how the developers have been treating it. And yeah, that's just basically all I want to say on that. It was once a beautiful game, and I think through fundamental game designs and them slipping things under the rug and applying hot band-aid fixes, then I don't really have trust in that game anymore. So yeah, that's my personal opinion on that. I mean, if you still love Overwatch, go ahead, continue to play it. It's your opinion. But for me personally, that's probably not on the cards. I'm not going to say it's completely impossible, but let's just say I'm one of the few people within the scene who has completely retired and has not come back to it. That's a very entitled title to have there. It's something that is to be treasured. When you say retired, and it's actually meant. You can't retire and come back a week later. It's not fucking retiring. You lose meaning to the word if people start treating retirement that way. For Valorant, I oddly feel anxious about. I enjoy the game on a casual slash competitive level, like within like ranked. But as a concept to cast, I find it difficult because I haven't come from a CS:GO background, and I feel like having that sort of advantage would be very useful in that type of environment. Um, I mean, sure, the strategies and stuff appeal to me and the diversity, but it is a little bit more anxious. Like, it makes me quite anxious actually thinking about it because I honestly felt like I could have bring something new to Overwatch if I just practiced my craft and worked at it for quite a while. Um, and I could say that for Rocket League as well when I briefly dipped into that. But I don't have like that same situation for Valorant because I feel like a lot of high tier casters are going to come into Valorant and they're just going to completely dominate, and it is not worth my expansion into it because I'm probably going to be outclassed. Um, I don't really have an ego in terms of performance, but I thought with Overwatch, I at least had somewhat of a chance if I could just remain persistent and I could, develop my own style, considering the different talent they had within the scene. But I just wasn't persistent enough, and I sort of, after going to coaching, I ruined my chance at evolving as a caster. So with that sort of said, with Valorant, I'm not 100% sure. It's not completely out of the cards. Like I might try community casting just to see how it goes and see the feedback. I mean, I'm completely open to criticism, but I think with that field, a lot of people are going to be hopping into it, and it's going to be quite oversaturated. With Overwatch, sure, it was oversaturated, but you had a lot of people who had no idea what the fuck they were talking about, which, I was part of that pool, don't get me wrong. But I feel like Valorant's a different type of thing where people are going to come in with a lot more knowledge, considering, the type of game it is and how similar it draws to concepts like CSGO. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens there. But yeah, I mean, this is probably going to be the end of the podcast. I appreciate you guys. This is episode 16 of Rally with Racket. Once again, the frequency of these should be once per week, depending on how long it takes for me to, get all the assets, overlays, and the music and stuff for my editing software. See if I can recover a few things. But either way, guys, make sure you have a wonderful week, weekend, morning, evening, wherever you may hail from. Have a good one, fellas. Goodbye.